What would happen if the sun suddenly disappeared for 24 hours? Imagine waking up, expecting a bright day, only to be greeted by an eerie and shakable darkness. No warmth, no sunlight, no life-giving rays. At first, it might seem like a strange, temporary glitch. But as hours pass, the world begins to change in ways we never expected. The earth cools, animals panic, and humans are left to grapple with the loss of the one constant in their lives. What would we do if the sun just vanished? Let's explore this mind-boggling scenario together. The sun, it's something we all take for granted. Every morning, we wake up to its warmth, its light, and its energy. It gives us life, drives our weather, and supports the ecosystems that sustain our planet. But have you ever stopped to wonder what would happen if, for some reason, the sun just disappeared for 24 hours? It may sound like something out of a science fiction movie, but the consequences would be far from imaginary. The Earth would immediately begin to change in ways that we can't even begin to imagine. Plants, animals, and humans all rely on the sun in some form, and without it, our entire world would be thrown into chaos. In this video, we're going to dive deep into this chilling scenario and explore what might really happen if the sun vanished, even for just a single day. The first, our immediate effects. When the sun disappears, the first thing that strikes you is the complete and utter darkness. Imagine waking up, and instead of the familiar glow of morning sunlight streaming through your window, there's only an impenetrable blackness. It's not just nighttime darkness. It's the kind of darkness that feels unnatural and settling. You might first assume that it's just a temporary glitch, maybe a freak cloud covering the sun, but as time passes and the sky remains pitch black, panic starts to set in. People rush outside to see if anyone else is experiencing the same thing. What's happening? Is this a cosmic event? A solar eclipse? But no, this is different. It's as though the sun has simply ceased to exist. Within the first few minutes, people are already starting to panic. Without sunlight, the natural rhythm of life is completely thrown off. Animals begin to act out of character, sensing something's wrong. Birds stop chirping. Nocturnal creatures like owls become strangely more active in the middle of what should be the daytime. The absence of the sun leaves the world eerily silent, almost like time itself has paused. Humans, too, feel the disorientation. Without the sun, there's no reference for time, and everything becomes chaotic. Most people are used to waking up to the sun's rays, or using it to set their daily schedule. But now, there's no way of knowing if it's morning, afternoon, or evening. Our sense of time is being completely warped. Anxiety builds as confusion sets in, and people start asking themselves, what happens next? Can we survive without the sun for long? The thought that the sun might not return looms like a dark cloud over everyone's mind. The next few hours' temperature drops. As the hours drag on, the effects of the sun's disappearance start becoming painfully evident. With no sunlight, the Earth's surface begins to cool rapidly. Within the first few hours, temperatures begin to drop drastically. The world, once warm and comfortable under the sun's rays, becomes a chilling, frigid environment. Without the sun's heat, the temperature can fall by several degrees each hour. In just a few hours, cities and rural areas alike would see temperatures plummet to below freezing. If you're living in the tropics, the heat that you're so used to quickly turns into an uncomfortable chill. If you're in a more temperate or colder region, the situation becomes even more dire. The lack of heat from the sun causes serious problems. Without the sun's warming effect, the Earth begins to lose its heat more quickly than usual, and things like buildings, roads, and bodies of water, which had been warmed by the sun, cool off just as quickly. Streets, especially in colder regions, begin to freeze, creating dangerous conditions for transportation. The lack of sunlight means there's no way for the Earth to maintain the balance it relies on for temperature regulation. Humans start to feel the effects. People who are outside without sufficient clothing or shelter start to suffer from hypothermia, the body's response to extreme cold. Even indoors, the temperature starts to drop steadily as buildings slowly lose heat. The power grids that rely on sunlight, in places where solar energy is common, begin to falter, causing even more widespread panic. Heating systems struggle to maintain warmth, and the cold becomes unbearable for those in areas that don't have strong insulation or central heating. Animals, too, feel the effects. Domesticated pets, like dogs and cats, who are used to being outside during the day, become disoriented and scared, seeking shelter. Wildlife begins to adapt by moving to the darker, cooler regions of forests or burrowing into the ground to escape the cold. Birds and insects, which are active during the day, become less active, not understanding why the sun has failed to show up. This drop in temperature doesn't just affect comfort, it begins to affect survival. Plants, for example, rely on sunlight not just for energy, but to regulate their internal temperatures. Without the warmth, they begin to wither, and the plants that produce oxygen are no longer functioning at full capacity, adding to the chaos. Life without the sun biological impacts can no longer photosynthesize, the process by which they turn sunlight into the energy needed for growth. Photosynthesis is the very foundation of life on Earth, and without it, plants begin to die. Some might survive for a short time by tapping into their stored energy reserves, but within a day, the damage becomes irreversible. What's even more concerning is how this will affect the entire food chain. Herbivores, which depend on plants for food, will soon begin to feel the effects. As the plants wither and die, these animals have less to eat, leading to a dramatic drop in their population. Predators that rely on these herbivores will also feel the impact, and in turn, those higher up the food chain will struggle. This disruption in the ecosystem begins a ripple effect that could lead to the collapse of local environments. For humans, the impact is also profound. The lack of sunlight affects our bodies on a molecular level. Vitamin D production, which is critical for bone health, immune function, and mood regulation, ceases to happen. While you might think you can survive a day without the sun, the long-term effects would start to show, with fatigue and weakened immune systems becoming more common as the absence of sunlight interferes with our biological processes. In addition, human bodies start to suffer from extreme cold. With no sunlight to warm the earth, and with the temperature continuing to drop, people struggle to find shelter and warmth. Your body's natural ability to adapt to environmental changes falters, and the situation becomes a matter of survival. Cities that rely on agriculture begin to face food shortages as crops fail, and the global economy, based on the movement of goods, grinds to a halt. The psychological effects, the disappearance of the sun doesn't just affect the physical world. It hits our minds in ways we can't ignore. As the hours pass and darkness becomes the new norm, the psychological toll on humans would become incredibly severe. People are built to function under the natural rhythms of the earth, and the absence of sunlight completely disrupts those rhythms. Our biological clocks, known as circadian rhythms, rely heavily on the rising and setting of the sun to regulate sleep, activity, and overall mood. Without sunlight, confusion and fear start to take over. The first signs of psychological strain would show up quickly. People's sleep cycles would be disrupted, as they no longer have the natural cues that tell their bodies when it's time to rest and when to be active. This could lead to a kind of social jet lag that would affect everyone from children to the elderly. Anxiety levels would begin to rise, and the feeling of disorientation would intensify. As the hours stretch on, the emotional weight of the situation would start to grow. People might begin to feel hopeless, as if time itself has stopped. The constant darkness, combined with the rising temperature drop and uncertainty of what's happening, would breed a sense of panic and powerlessness. Worse yet, the lack of sunlight would take a toll on people's mental health. Sunlight is vital for the production of serotonin, the chemical in our brains that stabilizes our mood. Without it, people could quickly start experiencing symptoms of depression, including sadness, irritability, and even feelings of despair. As social creatures, humans rely on each other for comfort in times of crisis, but in a situation like this, every person would be struggling with their own anxiety, adding to the general tension. Furthermore, this unnatural darkness, lasting for 24 hours, could begin to trigger a primal fear in people. Humans have always feared the night and the unknown. The sudden onset of a never-ending night would feed into that fear, magnifying the sense of vulnerability and helplessness. The long-term effects, by the time 24 hours have passed, the consequences of the sun's disappearance would be catastrophic, not only for the environment, but for the very fabric of human society. The temperature would have dropped to dangerous levels, and Earth's surface would be much colder than usual. The cold would still persist even with the return of the sun, as the Earth would have lost much of the heat it normally maintains during the day. Cities, especially those in colder climates, could face frozen pipes, electrical failures, and infrastructure damage from the extreme cold. In some regions, survival would become a fight against the freezing temperatures, with only the most insulated buildings offering shelter. In terms of biology, the damage would be irreversible for many species. Plants, after being deprived of sunlight for an entire day, would not just wither, they would die. The loss of plants would trigger a chain reaction in the food chain. Herbivores that depend on those plants would starve, and predators would have nothing to hunt. This loss of life would affect entire ecosystems and have a long-lasting impact on biodiversity. For humans, the consequences would be just as severe. Food shortages would begin to hit hard as crops fail and supply chains are disrupted. The immediate aftermath of this cosmic event would see people scrambling for resources, but with no sunlight to drive agriculture and no way to regulate temperature, food would become scarce. Economies worldwide would plummet, with agricultural industries in particular collapsing under the weight of crop failure and an inability to farm. But even more troubling is the psychological damage. For 24 hours, the world would have been plunged into a crisis of unimaginable scale. The fear and uncertainty would leave people scarred, and the trauma from the event would have ripple effects long after the sun returns. The world would have been reminded of just how fragile our existence truly is, and that reminder would linger long after the physical effects begin to subside. The idea of something as essential as the sun vanishing for even a single day challenges everything we think we know about our world and our place in it. It would reshape the way we think about the delicate balance of life on Earth, and our dependence on forces far beyond our control. In the end, the disappearance of the sun for 24 hours is not just a thought experiment, it's a sobering reminder of how interconnected everything on Earth truly is. From the plants and animals that rely on sunlight to survive, to the way we organize our daily lives around the sun's presence, the loss of it, even temporarily, would send shockwaves through our entire system. The temperature drop would be one of the first obvious signs, but the ripple effects would extend far beyond just cold weather. The disruption of ecosystems, the collapse of food chains, and the strain on human health would be devastating. And then there's the psychological toll, the fear, confusion, and panic that would grip people as the world becomes a place of never-ending darkness. While 24 hours might not seem like a long time, it would be more than enough to change life as we know it. Yet, through all of this, one thing becomes painfully clear: we depend on the sun in ways we may not even fully understand. Its warmth, light, and life-giving energy are woven into the very fabric of existence. The disappearance of the sun, even for just a day, would prove just how vulnerable we are. It's a humbling reminder of the delicate balance we live in and the fragile nature of life on Earth. So, next time you step out into the sunlight, remember how vital it is and how much it shapes our world. Let's never take it for granted, because in this thought experiment, we see how quickly things can change when something so fundamental goes missing. The sun is more than just a star in the sky, it's the lifeblood of our planet, and without it, we would struggle to survive. Call to action optional: what do you think would happen if the sun really did disappear for 24 hours? How would you survive in a world plunged into darkness and cold? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you're fascinated by these mind-bending scenarios and want to learn more about what could happen in extreme situations like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join the conversation. I'd love to hear your ideas, and together we can explore even more what-if scenarios. Stay curious, and remember, never take the sun for granted. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, it really helps us out. Share it with friends who'd love to learn something new, and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating content like this. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.